The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
This is the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun on AM 950. Tonight we're going to play parts of interviews from 3 different guests. We've had some amazing people appear on the show, and we think that they should be heard from again. Enjoy the show. We are talking with Cindy Sauer, and we are talking about the events that are in a book. We're going to be talking about how you can get the book in probably the next segment. It's called The Exorcism of Cindy Sauer. And Cindy, I do have to ask you, are you doing all right over there? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I know this is not. It's tough. Yeah.
It's but even though it's not easy, I really feel like people need to know this, because this is not something that happens every day, and I just want people to be more aware of these things. And there are risks, that you can put yourself at. And I promise you, nobody wants to have to go through that. No.
So where we left off, folks, is that Cindy's husband passed away, and things started to get aggressive with spirit energy. Where we left off talking about something being thrown at her outside after an appearance of her husband, seen by her daughter. A lug nut was thrown at you, Cindy. And I just, before we get on it, at the time, did you think the appearance of your husband was really him? And now do you think, if you did, do you now think that was him or that was something else?
At the time, I did think it was him. I did, and I thought that he was very angry at me.
Oh, okay.
So that was not him.
No,
I pretend that it wasn't him. At the time I did, and it was scary, because if he's capable of doing that, and this is the man I was with for 18 years, yeah, if he's capable of doing that, like, what did I do? What is he gonna do if he can? So yeah, that was rough, because when we were married, it was tough. There was abuse. He was an alcoholic for a good long time, so it was hard. So you have to go there. Your brain has to go there.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you think. So, yeah, at the time I did. Now, no, I know it wasn't him.
I get it.
Yeah.
So what happened next?
Think that other things were thrown. Those weren't the only things that were thrown. There was a Bible that went across the room. It got destroyed. It just flew across the room, pages everywhere. Things like that would happen. My crucifix. It's so strange, because looking back on it now, a big picture is different. But when these small things happen, you're more tolerant to them. I had a crucifix that broke. It fell off the wall, and I watched it fall, and it broke at the wrists and at the ankles, and so Christ broke off that way.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was disturbing. Crosses would be upside down. They really would. Things would move. Things would roll. Doors would open and close. It just kept escalating. There was a time when all the cabinets in the kitchen would open at one time. They would open and slam. The dryer would open and slam. That was the physical stuff that started to kind of, it started to escalate that way. And that was just not there yet. We're not there yet.
This is like the infestation
stage
of the 4 stages of demonic possession.
The thing is that at these times I could hear these things speaking to me. And I just thought, I'm stressed. I'm stressed. Sure. This is a lot, and I'm just stressed. But I did hear them, and it was whispers. And at that point, just these incessant whispers when I would get really stressed out, especially. And, I just didn't think much of it as far as it being something outside of me. And as far as being I've been in the paranormal field, been researching for a very long time, and even long before that. Mm-hmm. And I never studied demons. I never studied demonology. I knew a little about it, but I was terrified of it. I didn't even want to give it any thought. So, thinking that it could be that, I was like, I didn't even entertain anything like that. And it's surreal. So how are you going to, it's hard to accept. So you can't just say, hey, look, I think there are demons around. Let's do something. Right. It doesn't work that way.
No,
it doesn't work that way.
Because it has to play with your sanity a little bit, right?
A lot. And that's what these things do. That's the bigger part. As much as you see that happens outwardly to a person who is oppressed or possessed, the inward part, I promise you, there was 100 times more going on inside than there is outside. Absolutely. It's very much a battle. Even that person may be sitting still, but inside it is not still. These things are just, they're relentless, and they will attack you in here as much as they do outside. So, and I think that's something that people really don't know. That it's not a constant state of, you're not laying in a bed and puking and, all that.
Right.
You're functional. There are many moments when you're functional, but it's more terrifying because you don't know when you're not going to be. You don't know when they're going to do this again, so the waiting game is a tough game. And it's that really messes with your head too. And I think that's probably part of the plan. Everything that they do is systematically used to break you down.
Well, and isn't it true? I mean, that when you're in these situations, when you're under possession, that the purpose is to isolate you from others, right?
Absolutely. And they're good at that. They're good. People don't want to be around you when you're like that.
No.
Who wants to be around that? A few people, very few people, were by my side at that time. Even after my husband died, that really turned a lot of people off, and they just kind of disappeared. So it was rough. It was a lonely time. There was a particular incident though. I went to do some investigating in a place that I really wanted to go to for a while. And that's when I had my first real physical attack. And I call these attacks, they're not something attacking me. It's when they get inside of me and they take control. And that was the first time it happened. And that one, I mean, it was scary. It was confusing. And to be split is weird when you're not in control of yourself.
Yeah.
But you can see, I think people may think you don't know what's happening, but you do. You're very aware, you're very awake, but there's just nothing you can do. There's just nothing you can do. And it may be fuzzy at times where you can't remember some things, but you're very aware of what's going on as a whole.
What would they do to you? What would they make you do?
They would talk. A lot of it was the talking, and the talking was manipulation. And you're going crazy. I'm not really here. You're imagining me, which that in itself is just crazy. But then once it got so far, and after a few attacks, is when they would start to tell me, you should take that knife over there and just stab it right in his back. He won't feel it. It'll be okay. Or take that hammer and, hit him over the head a few times. Snap that person's neck. Like if I would get really upset and angry, I just would it would start to turn into where they would just take over. And I would really feel like I'm just going to kill that person. Like I'm going to do it, but not me.
Yeah.
not me. They got so good at being in there and so good, at taking over that it wasn't to a point where they would physically, and I want to like rephrase that part of it, because they don't take control of you and manipulate you the way that you are as a human, because they can't. Their movements, the way that they operate, they can't make our bodies do things themselves. They can, if they take over your mind, if they oppress you, they can push you to do things. They can coax you to doing things and like that, influence you. But they can't physically take your body and take your hand and stab a knife.
Yeah.
They could not do that. But they could very much try to get me to do it. Like push, they can push you to a point where you're right there. And even to myself,
sure,
I would be violent to me. I would lose control and punch myself repeatedly and not feel it, or scratch myself, or pull out my hair, or bite myself really hard and draw blood and keep biting, and I never felt it when it happened. I was not in control when it happened, but it did happen. It happened a couple of times. So
how close were you to hurting somebody?
Never.
You were able to control that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was never close to hurting anybody. Only myself.
Which is bad enough, but yeah.
Yeah, that was very bad. But no, they did not have that control. And having said that, my faith is strong. I'm not your traditional Christian by any means, but my faith is strong. And, there's a part of you that stays there that they can't control. And that part just gets deep inside. But there's that part that they can't cross that. And so, that in itself is thank God for that. But no, I never came close to hurting anybody, even though they would push me in that direction. I never came close, never worried about it. I was never violent toward another person the whole time. So,
which is great.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't, there are things that you feel guilty over, you carry a certain amount of guilt for having to expose people to it. That's a big part of it. The guilt is that will definitely Plague you if you let it. Because after all, it is your body.
Where do you think these? Was it more than one? Was it multiple?
It's never one.
Yeah, right. It's always you're
always,
right.
Always many.
Yeah,
always.
That's true.
Yes, there were many.
Where do you think this started? Do you think it started as simply you being at your weakest point? Did your husband have anything to do with it, being the type of person that he was, or from childhood? What do you think?
Honestly, I really feel like that it was a childhood event that just needed a catalyst.
Okay.
And so many people have asked me that, and I've actually just discussed this with so many people, with the priest, with and that's the part that's confusing, because we don't really know for sure. We can't pinpoint it, and that makes it that much more difficult, because how do you solve it if you don't know what the origin is? Like, where did it come from? And we've tried different approaches to to helping and taking care of it.
Did you ever think? Did you try or ever think of like any sort of regression or anything like that? I'm sure everything I'm saying you're just like, yeah, Greg. Do you think we haven't tried?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything I haven't tried yet, because I've been dealing with it for such a long time.
Do you think that they're hiding it purposely in your mind? So because yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Just as much as if something's happening, let's just, for instance, say, the priest is coming over for an exorcism. They're not going to tell me, hey, I'm coming over at 12 for an exorcism. they're not going to tell me anything.
Yeah.
There might say he wants to come and just speak to you for a minute, which is how they did the first time. Because whatever I know, they will know.
You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook. Look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. And finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. We'll be back with another guest after the break. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
I've had a really good week. I've been watching this fantastic series on Fox Nation streaming service. It is, of course, it's called Secrets of the Asylum. Tonight I have with us Scott Porter. This has been quite the exciting program. I've been, I asked people, go ahead, put comments in the chat. And, right away, people are wondering where season 2 is. One in particular, I've been watched the first 6 episodes, but season 1 is 6 episodes, right? Is that
yes.
Where you left off?
That's it. The first season is 6 episodes, so we're hopeful that we can hear something soon and we can go back and continue to dig into the history of Eloise because there's so much more left.
There's so many reasons why I love this series, which I'm afraid to say all of them because I don't want to give anything away as well. But the idea that it's ongoing and that you and Stephanie are allowing it to breathe, it's truly it's once again, I just love the fact that you're able to do that. I want to talk a little bit about what was going on there when you were all investigating. And I do apologize. The local paranormal researcher, could you remind me of his name, please?
Oh, Ryan Sherwin.
Thank you very much. I could not. Folks, there's a lot of names in this program. There's a lot of people that you see, either living or dead. Give me a break. I'm doing the best I can. But I mean, he was incredible. There is certain parts that was kind of trying for him, and I don't blame him at all.
Right.
But overall, no one freaked out. That was so nice to see. I know. I mean, it was really, really cool. But within the first episode, you're already getting some pretty ridiculous stuff happening from spirits when you're investigating. Or actually, were you even investigating or just doing the walkthrough?
No, we were doing the walkthrough. And the way that we approach it is that Stephanie goes through, she's a psychic medium. She goes through and she kind of just feels the area and starts telling the story. She just starts spewing information. So I'm recording it, writing it down, so that if anything comes out, we can go back and kind of look and see if we can find those connections.
Right.
The beautiful part about the show is you'll see these flashes where there's these recreations. Yeah. And the big thing that we wanted to do in the show was, it's one thing to have a psychic medium telling you what they're seeing and what they're experiencing, what they're feeling, but those images are straight from Steph. Those images are what she's feeling, what she's seeing. So we wanted to kind of give the viewer some insight into her mind as well. But the very first night we get in there, we're doing the walkthrough, and Steph and I are going back and forth. We're talking. She's giving me names. She's, things that she's hearing, things that she feels. And as we're both standing there, we're watching one of our camera guys. So we had, at that particular time, we had 3 camera guys with us and an audio guy. That was the only people that were there. We may have had one more person who was an assistant, just kind of helping move things around as we were going. But we were aware of everyone's location. So we knew where everyone was. Yep. It's not, all the other crew is in one single room locked down. So we know what's happening. We know what noises are happening or the ones that we want to hear. But we're watching our camera guy, And what really got our attention was he was stepping into a nurse's station to film us from inside the nurse's station, and he bumped one of the cameras, or bumped the camera on the door frame. And you know how expensive those cameras are.
Yeah.
So the first thing we did is both of us looked. You know, we're looking straight at him, and we kind of settle back into what we're doing, and immediately, like, he throws the camera to the floor. I mean, just throws it.
That's right.
And he says, something is stinging me. Something's in my shirt. Something's in my back. Something's stinging me. So we filmed this in May of 22. So it's been 22. Yeah, 22. And so it's been a while since it was filmed. But so the first thing that we're thinking is maybe it's a wasp. There's something has gotten to his shirt. So Steph says, hey, I'm going to raise your shirt up and take a look and see what it is. So when she pulls his shirt up, there's scratches on his back everywhere. Now, I've heard of people getting scratched. I've seen people's aftermath of getting scratched, and I've always questioned it. I even questioned this, but the thing was, it happened right in front of me. Yeah. And when we pulled the shirt up, the shirt was one of those, the moisture wicking type material. There was not a stitch out of place on the outside of the shirt.
Yeah.
On the inside of the shirt, there was no blood on the shirt, but his wounds were actively bleeding at that point. So we knew it just happened. And we tried to explain all that in the show. There's no way that and we checked the walls, we checked everything. Something legitimately attacked him from behind.
As a fellow paranormal investigator, one of the things that I've learned over the years when it comes to scratches, and I actually implemented this at an event I was at York, Nebraska, at a mortuary back in 2022, actually, as it happens. And some guy had said to me, he comes up to me at the end, and you kind of know the type, if you don't mind me saying so, of where you're going to have problem investigators at events. And he's just like, I was scratched. The back of my neck scratched, and you look at him, and it sure is scratched, but a couple things. First of all, there's a puffiness, like irritation around the scratches that if it's something spirit, there really isn't that sort of puffiness, irritation. And secondly, I'm like, hey, can I see your hands for a second? And he showed me, and he had skin in his fingernails.
Yeah.
I said, I'll let you just leave, and we won't say anything more. But also, I have to say, Scott, I did have Stephanie on my show, a different iteration of my show, probably about 6 years ago or something, and she did say, using her mediumship, she's like, someday I'm going to have a future boyfriend who will not respond to you on Facebook. It was really strange. It was really incredible, but no, she didn't. She had the true part of that story. She was on my show. Everything else is a blatant lie. It really is I mean, like you said, you're looking at it. I mean, are you worried about yourself or Stephanie at this point? Because I mean, this is. Do you subscribe? And no offense to the camera person, but sometimes it always seems like the weakest link is the one that gets attacked. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this particular camera guy was probably not the weakest link.
Okay.
But it was very intriguing. We're still digging into that aspect of it, the whole aspect of why him. I mean, he did back into a nurse's station in an area where there was a murder by a patient. The interesting thing that happened was after the cameras were off, the cameraman actually went to Stephanie and said, "Hey, what just happened? What happened to me?" He was visibly shaken. He had a very genuine interest into what happened to him. And, she spoke to him and said, I don't know what it was, because we didn't know at that point. We were just in there trying to collect or gather a feel for the building and kind of get an idea of what we were getting into. And he actually, after that night, he left. He packed his bags and left, and we had to operate differently after that. So he wouldn't come back.
I don't blame him, right? If this is your first time,
No.
I mean, a lot of people on these crews, they don't, in my experience, they don't believe in any of it,
Right.
until something happens. So I don't know if that's the case for this gentleman. It doesn't really matter. What's happened. What do we want to talk about next for some standout evidence? Because I'm being very careful. Scott and I talked about this before the show. There's some big things that happen in this show that if you like to watch stuff caught on camera, you're not going to be disappointed. But we want to talk about some of it, but not all of it.
I think one of the pieces that we really dug into, that you'll see us digging into on the show, and I'm going to give the Cliff Notes version of it. There's a spirit there. She's a young girl. She had been committed to the asylum because she was having seizures. They were treating her with something called water therapy, and so the history is she had been released for Christmas to go spend time with her parents, and she had visit with them, had a great Christmas. She didn't want to go back to the asylum. Her parents said, honey, you've only got I think she had 4 more weeks or a month or ever how much longer it was to stay there. It wasn't much. And they said, if you go back, you complete this bit, you'll be done and you'll be back home. And she was adamant she didn't want to go back. She didn't like the things she was seeing or experiencing. And what we found out was that she had kind of a free roam. She could walk around the buildings and just kind of visit and see things that maybe she shouldn't see. But she was there about 2 weeks, or maybe it wasn't that long. Maybe it was 7 or 8 days. And she drowned in the hydrotherapy tub. We went in to investigate because that's an area where people have said they've experienced her. I mentioned her name was Harmonia.
Yeah.
And we thought that with Steph and I both being parents and having both of us have children around the same age as what Harmonia was, that we might be able to make a real valid connection with her. And so we tried to go in there and talk to her like she was a child and get to know her. And Steph got into the tub to kind of put herself in the place where Harmonia was when she passed, to see if she could visualize what happened. And when she did that, we had a disembodied voice in the room that everyone heard. We captured it on every recording device we had. We had 2 cameras going, 3 mic packs, and an audio recorder. Captured it everywhere. And it was such a fast phrase that you couldn't really tell what it was. It just kind of sounded like just some sounds. But anyway, while Steph was there, she actually says it's not an accident when she's visualizing what happened. We also got some strange names on a geoport that we were using there. And come to find out, after doing some manipulation to the audio of the disembodied voice, I literally slowed it way down, and it became more clearly that there was a girl's voice there saying, they killed me. So we had always read that she drowned by having a seizure while she was in the middle of a hydrotherapy session. That was the first clue that something had happened from her, and the fact that Steph literally said it was not an accident.
Wow.
So when we went back and looked, we found the name that was coming to the geoport that we didn't know had any connection to her case. The name Edmund kept coming through the geoport, Edmund. And what we discovered was, when we found her death certificate, we found that the coroner on her death certificate was Edmund Knobloch. And he tried to literally reopen her case as a homicide after he had said that it was a drowning of natural cause. So it doesn't get more real than the spirit telling the story of something that is wrong in history.
And that you could find the validation through other means as well.
Yes, right. We literally got access to some of Edmund's, I think, journals and some other articles where he had stated that he tried to reopen the case as a homicide. So he had, I mean, when you look at the room, looking at it from an investigative standpoint, the room was probably, I would say, 15, 16 feet by 10 or 12 feet with a tub in the middle. I mean, if you're a nurse and you're in that room, you've got someone in the tub, if they start having a seizure, you're going to see them, you're going to hear them, you're going to know that something's wrong, you're going to get them out of the tub.
Yep.
I just, it all screams homicide to me.
And that's just one example.
Just one of thousands of examples. I mean, literally just in front of the building there at Eloise, the K Beard building across Michigan Avenue, there's a potter's field with, we know, over 7,000 unclaimed bodies that are just buried there.
That's just incredible. And dare I point out at this, and we're talking with Scott Porter about his show on Fox Nation streaming service, Secrets of the Asylum, an absolutely fantastic show that is paranormal, but beyond paranormal as well. You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to ghostboxradio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook, look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, and finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. We'll be back with another guest after the break. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950.
The best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.
We're talking about Frankenstein's monster. We're talking about the Universal Frankenstein series. And it's really very interesting, Bill. Bill Evenson is our guest tonight. He is the co-host to Frankenstein Minute. You said that episodes come out every 2 weeks. Did I hear that right?
No, every week, every Friday.
Week. That's right, because you have one. I mean, you if these movies are like 70 minutes, yeah, you do have to.
Son of Frankenstein is over 99 minutes, so we did 101 episodes actually.
So how far in advance do you record these? Do you record multiple ones a day, or?
Yeah, we'll usually do blocks of 5. That seems to be the most that we can do at one time in
reasonable.
One sitting.
Yeah, no, that's reasonable. So definitely go to where you get your podcasts, subscribe to it, start from the beginning, right? I mean, there's a ton of content, so start from the beginning and work your way through. And it's I guarantee by the time you're done, you're going to be a Frankenstein. Universal Frankenstein expert. Now, first of all, I got the 4K Universal Monster set, and I have yet to watch it. I bet Frankenstein looks. They all probably look really good, don't they?
Yeah, I think they really do look good in 4K. Some look better than others. You know,
Sure.
There's only so much you can do, but. Yeah, the 4K upgrade, I think, is worth it in this case. Yeah.
Well, and it wasn't until, and correct me if I'm wrong. When I'll just ask you because you'll know. When was that? Colin Clive? What's his name?
Colin Clive. Yeah.
Is that his name, or is you're just now making fun of him?
No, Colin Clive.
Okay, I'm trying to remember the actor.
He plays a guy named Frankenstein.
Yeah, I've heard of him. And you're as the expert, I'd hope that you would help me instead of mock me. You know, that would have been a real great friendship opportunity. Be like, oh, Colin Clive, yes, the gentleman who played Frank. No, instead you just laugh at me, and that's fair actually. That line that was cut from the original film about puts me up, with the gods or whatever. When was that reinstated into the film?
Oh boy, that's a good question because I think it was in the 80s.
Oh, that long ago. I guess I thought
yeah,
it was.
But there is a VHS release before the DVD release that had it reinstated. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, what? So as Doctor Who fans, we might remember that scene is in an episode of Doctor Who, the TV movie.
That's right.
That came out in 1996. But yeah, it had already been reinstated by them. But then you know how these things work. Maybe the ones they're showing on television still had it cut out. And the line is, if I could say it now without getting cut, I don't know. Because Henry's freaking out. He's yelling, "It's alive," and all that stuff. And somebody says, "Henry, in the name of God." And he says, "In the name of God, now I know what it feels like to be God."
Right.
But, yeah, they just kind of cut it.
Very controversial for back in the day.
That's true. Well, and they cut another bit, which was he's playing with little Maria. They're throwing their flowers in the pond. And then they run out of flowers. And she says, "What? Oh, I guess we're all out of flowers." So he picks her up and throws her in the pond innocently without malice or anything. And it was deemed to be too controversial. So they cut out him throwing her in the pond, but only showed him coming towards her, which is actually more menacing. So then when you see her later and you just see her corpse as her father's carrying her through the town, she's covered in mud, but it's black and white. So for all you know, she's covered in blood. You don't even know what happened to her. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's really interesting. And Boris Karloff himself, he's an actor. That's what he came from the UK for, is to be an actor in the US, and he's this monster. But he really wanted to play it in a way that gave this creature a lot of emotion, a lot of pathos. And once James Whale only did the first two films, right?
Right.
I mean, was that pretty much? You think if James Whale would have continued to do films, which is impossible, really, do you think that Boris Karloff might have stayed? I mean, because I think that they were on the same page, weren't they, of what the point of the purpose of the Frankenstein monster was?
See, again, that's a really good question, because the other side of that is you hear a lot of stories about the mistreatment of Boris Karloff on the first film. The way that the stories are generally told is that Whale was in some way jealous of the attention that Karloff was getting, which I don't know if I really quite understand that. No. But the treatment that he went through on that film, having to wear these boots and carrying Colin Clive around and up the stairs and different things, it was that kind of treatment that actually led to Boris Karloff being one of the founders of the Screen Actors Guild. And I think it's the second round of people that joined the Screen Actors Guild. It has Bela Lugosi as well. So they were both really early adopters of that. So I do think that, because I do agree with you that he probably would have been a boon to the series to have Whale come back and work with Karloff again, because they worked again in Bride of Frankenstein, and that's considered by many to be the highlight of the whole kit and caboodle.
And I mean, it was Boris Karloff was great in Son of Frankenstein, but this character, which we all felt we could understand, we felt sorry for, suddenly his starts becoming just a monster being manipulated by everybody else.
Yep. Yeah, that's his role in Son. He's got a couple of moments that are pretty great. There's the scene in where he looks at himself in the mirror, and when he's with Basil Rathbone, and then there's the scene, of course, when Igor is killed, and there's he's really got it. He's really got that role. It's really he maybe it's obvious, but he nails it. Whereas then as the series goes on, it's kind of funny. And I do a podcast called Frankenstein Minute, where we do the Universal Frankenstein film series.
Never heard of it.
But it becomes less and less Frankenstein.
Right.
Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is a great Wolfman movie. I sometimes joke that our podcast is going to become a Wolfman podcast because that the Wolfman becomes a little bit more prominent as the series goes on, and the monster can be a little bit of an afterthought.
Well, and I mean, all I can remember, and like I said, it's been a long time since I saw Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. But all I can remember about it, about when I think about the monster, is him walking around with his hands out straight. You know, very stereotypical of what you think. Like Herman Munster would do that at the opening credits of the Munsters as more of like a joke. I mean, and that was Glenn Strange at that point, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, he when they made Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, they not only brought back Bela Lugosi to play Dracula again, they brought back Lon Chaney Jr. to play the Wolfman. He's the only one that ever played the Wolfman in the Universal series. So that was his fourth film at that point as the Wolfman. And they brought back Glenn Strange, who had done the previous two films as well, House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. Both of those films have Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein in them. There's something about that trio that they made 3 films together. But you know, like the Mummy never shows up, but there's something about that trio that I think it's amazing that they brought them back to make that Abbott and Costello film. It's like a treasure that we have, and I don't know if they even really realized what an impact it was going to have. To this day, they show. I think they might show it every year on Svengoolie.
I would believe it. And it almost feels like, whether intended or not, it's a goodbye.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true. It's got an actual ending. Yeah. Well, and it's definitely a goodbye to Bela.
Yeah. To an era.
He would continue working for a few more years with people like Ed Wood. But.
Right. Exactly. and it was like truly an end of an era. And even that, I mean, you know, Abbott and Costello themselves, they're not on borrowed time, but that's coming to an end. You know, that's another. Well, I mean, that's probably another 6-7 years, but nothing is lasting forever. I do want to challenge you. Am I wrong here? I don't think Lon Chaney Jr. played the werewolf in the first film. In the Werewolf of London, if you mean the movie Werewolf of London, he doesn't play him there. That's Henry Hull, but that's not the Wolfman. So what is he?
I consider him a different character. Yeah,
is that just you? Is that just you that considers it, or is that like amongst?
No, it's a different character. He's got a different name.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because he actually is playing the same character, not just somebody being afflicted and becoming a Wolfman.
Yeah,
he's playing he's playing. What is it? Talbot? Larry Talbot. Yeah,
Lawrence Talbot. Yeah. Yep.
All right, I'm with you. I'm just
I'm
just trying to screw you up. That's all. I'm not getting there.
You almost got me.
You almost got me. Almost got you there.
I like Werewolf of London, though. That's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. Yeah.
A lot of those early ones. I like another one I also really like. I like The Invisible Man.
Absolutely. James Whale directed that one.
That's true. Once again, James Whale. And now, is Universal trying to relaunch these characters at all?
What day is it?
True, right?
It seems like they do, and then they don't. The last one that they really announced was that Dark Universe. I don't know if people remember this, but they announced that there was going to be a universe for these films, these monsters to come back. And there's even a famous photo that they put out that has like Johnny Depp and Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe and a couple other people in it. So they made one film, The Mummy, with Tom Cruise, and people just hated it. Yeah. So they kind of scrapped that. But what they've done instead is periodically put out like single films. There was an Invisible Man that came out a few years back that I think was a Blumhouse film, or is it pronounced Blumhouse? That had a great reception, and I think that's one of the ways. I still think they can make the monster universe work, but what they keep trying, when they do try to do it with the Mummy, like we talked about, and then Van Helsing was another one, is they make them these big action films.
Yeah,
and I don't think it translates the way they're trying to do it. But then the latest thing is Guillermo del Toro seems to be actually making a Frankenstein film. They had a casting.
That's right.
They casted Christoph Waltz to be in it, so it's like, okay, this is going to be a real thing, and that could be in my opinion, it could be a franchise, but I might be biased.
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point. We just have about a minute left, and you bring up a really good point because monster films, like if you look at where the stories come from, they're meant to scare, they're meant to frighten, but they also are meant for you to think. There's lessons to be learned about these monsters and why they are what they are, and we as humanity can learn from them. And I think you're right. That's a big part that's often missing, it feels like, from these films.
Yep. And that's Frankenstein in a nutshell, right? All the way back to Mary Shelley writing it in 1818. The monster is definitely, you definitely connect emotionally with the monster.
Absolutely. I mean, how amazing, and I do hope we see something. And I guess I'm biased. I'd love to see if they do Frankenstein. Well, I mean, they won't for this. I get it, but I'd love to see the old designs, the old makeup designs. I think that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm happy to hear it. This is stellar radio right now. So once again, folks, Frankenstein Minute. It gets new episodes drop on Frankenstein Friday, which I didn't hear about before. This is all new to me as well. Go to anywhere that you like. Get your podcast. Go to Facebook. Make sure you like the page. It's called Frankenstein Minute Village.
Yep, that's a group you can join, and I'll let you in.
You are listening to the best of GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun. Remember, you can hear full past episodes, see upcoming events, and order books of the authors we have on the show by going to GhostBoxRadio.com. Don't forget to like us over on Facebook, look us up at GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun, and finally, please consider supporting me on Patreon. We have a special, unique audio content that you'll not find anywhere else, plus special episodes. On Patreon, you can find me as GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakun.